Savvy Business Radio runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way, call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at savvybusinessradio.com.
Our guest today is Jacob Morgan. After having terrible jobs working for other people, Jacob went off on his own to research and explore how work and everything about it is changing. Today, Jacob Morgan is one of the world's leading authorities on the future of work, employee experience, and how the workplace is changing. He is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and futurist who advises business leaders and organizations around the world. To find out more about Jacob's work, go to thefutureorganization.com. Hi, Jacob. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio and our new video series, Heartbeat of the World. We're so happy to have you out here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it was very important to have you speak because you really help businesses build that perfect experience for their employees. And one of the things that came in for our new series was that people were concerned about how we could work together, have more tolerance for our neighbors and people around us. And it was a big thing after the election, a lot of animosity and polarity. But also some of that goes up to the workplace and how can we work together and create that wonderful experience for all of our employees, because most of us listening in are business owners. So how did you become the leader and authority in the future workplace and really helping businesses with that? How did that happen for you?
Interestingly enough, it happened because I had bad jobs working for other people. I graduated college from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and that was in 2006. I double majored in economics and psychology. I did really well in school, right? I got that the dual honors, and then my first job out of college was in Los Angeles, and it was an hour and a half commute to and from work each day. So literally 3 hours a day I was in my car. But I took the job because when I interviewed there, they said, oh, you're going to be doing all these amazing projects. You're going to be traveling. And I thought, okay, cool. First job out of college, I'm willing to work kind of, a little extra hard. But instead I was just doing data entry and cold calling and PowerPoint presentations. And then the moment the CEO came out of his office and had me go get him a cup of coffee was the day I realized that I'm out of this place. Yeah. And so I had, just a couple of those types of experiences. And then I realized, look, there's got to be a way I can make a living and make money that doesn't involve working for other people. And so I started doing anything I could. I started taking jobs on Craigslist. I did search engine optimization. I wrote articles for $15, $20 an article. I did all these different types of things 10 years ago and been on my own ever since. So thanks to that CEO who made me go get him coffee, I was so unhappy that I was like, I'm not working for anybody else ever again.
And I can relate. I mean, my very first job, I came out and they said, there's a lot of room for upward mobility. And I was like, ooh, yay. Let me tune in. Yeah. And then they showed me my desk. It was like, oh, I was like, angels are singing, my very own desk and chair and stapler. Yep. And before you know it, it's the same thing, go get me coffee or, just do these PowerPoints or file. I'm like, okay, I did not sign up for this. Or in some people's cases, go to college or master's degree to do this.
Yeah, it's the corporate, the business world and the way they think about employees and work and all that sort of stuff is totally broken. And so that's just been a big area of passion for me over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. And I was curious to say what kind of moved you over to the employee experience building and HR type of thing? What kind of drew you to that?
Well, it kind of just evolved naturally, right? So I don't know I guess most HR people tend to gravitate to the things that I say, but it's also broader, right? Because I work with a lot of business leaders and executives in non-HR specific roles. But through doing search engine optimization consulting, that kind of rolled into social media, that rolled into collaboration, that rolled into the future of work and employee experience. So the more I started doing this, the more I started to realize that all these things are connected. And as somebody that tries to kind of be aware of what's going on in the world, it's sort of like jumping onto the next big trend that I'm seeing with organizations. And it's just kind of been a natural evolution.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing, this is really jazzing me up, Jacob, is that the new evolution of business is so broad, and that with the age of technology, I work for a company now I'm helping out that they have a good portion of their clients can work wherever in the world because of this wonderful thing called a laptop we're talking on right now. And smartphones. I mean, you could be taking a trip to Germany and still be talking to your clients. It really allows mobility, not only for the business itself, but for the employees.
Yeah, and it's something that employees care about most. It's one of the things they desire to have most inside their organizations is that flexibility and mobility. It's also something that organizations struggle with the most. So it's important for companies to really think about what that looks like and how that works, especially in the world of this mobile, always moving worker.
Yeah.
So it's a huge thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've seen in some of the businesses I work with or help, I've seen that they will say, okay, we'll let you work from home. But then their greatest fear when they talk to me about their employees is like, well, I'm afraid if I send them home and let them work from home, they're actually not going to work. And when I come in and look at their policies and procedure and how things are operating, I said, often your employees aren't working here. They're sitting at their desk playing on Facebook, or they're by the water cooler talking to a coworker. It's like social hour here. So, I mean, sometimes actually when I've talked to employees, they said, I get a lot more done at work because I don't have distractions of employees or going to the water cooler or going to get coffee. I'm actually just focused on the work.
Yeah, I mean, we always assume that just because you can see somebody, it means that they're working. And if you can't see them, then they're not working. And I think in today's business world, we acknowledge that in order to attract and retain top talent, you have to look beyond just the radius of your organization. You have to look pretty much anywhere and anywhere you can in the entire world. And so you might have an office in the Bay Area and have awesome people that work with you in China, in Japan, in Australia, in various parts of Europe.
Yeah.
And so this kind of mobility, I think, is very exciting for organizations and for employees.
It is, absolutely. Now, you've written a wonderful book called The Employee Experience Advantage. Love that. How to win the war for talent by giving employees the workspace they want, the tools they need, and the culture they can celebrate. Love that.
Small subtitle, right? Just a small subtitle.
Just a small one. No, but how did you come to creating this book and coming up with the ideas? Because that's exactly what I think employees desire.
Well, employee engagement has been a big trend over the past few decades, and unfortunately, organizations haven't gotten anywhere with it. The investments in engagement programs have never been higher, but the scores have never been lower. And so I started to take a look at that and see, well, what's going on and why is that happening? And it turns out that there are some organizations around the world that are having good success, whereas most are not. And so what I found is that for most companies, when they say employee engagement, really what they're talking about is they force employees to work in outdated workplace practices, but they give them perks while they're doing it. So you might have to commute to and from work and sit in a cubicle and get permission for everything and be in this like super hierarchical environment, but you're going to get yoga, you're going to get free food on Wednesdays, stuff like that. Yeah. And that doesn't really do much, right? It doesn't cause the employees to become any more loyal. It doesn't cause them to give any more effort to the organization. And as a result, the organization doesn't see any type of business impact. And through interviewing these executives, I noticed that some companies have actually been redesigning their core workplace practices. Like they actually get together with their teams and they say, all right, how do we redesign completely what it means to work here? It's not about perks. It's about changing those core workplace practices. And that is what employee experience is about. It's changing those core workplace practices around your people instead of forcing them to work in old workplace practices and giving them perks.
Wow.
And so that's a fascinating thing.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you, though, that maybe the old structure, the hierarchy, and you have to follow a rule for everything, and everything has to be so procedural, isn't really the best way to go forward. What do you see as the best optimum way for businesses to work with their employees?
Well, some structure isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that kind of pyramid that we're all used to is definitely something that organizations are trying to break down in favor of more top-down communication and collaboration and bottom-up, right? So top-down, bottom-up, side to side, just basically everywhere. And it's the idea of having some structure, but having it, not like this kind of a pyramid, but maybe a little bit of a flatter kind of pyramid. So you have some structure in place, but it's much more, there's less layers between the top layers and the bottom layers, and the information and communication collaboration flows everywhere within the organization. That makes more sense than just having like this and saying, we up here are going to tell you everything what to do and we're going to push it down. But that flatter structure, I think, makes a lot more sense. It's scalable, it's practical, for any type of an organization. So I think that's most of what we're starting to see today.
Wow. Because what I'm seeing when I go into a lot of businesses, they do have a lot of structure and hierarchy and a lot of managers and supervisors. And what it is basically is a lot of people with titles that aren't really leading their teams. People don't feel led. They feel constrained, stuck in their cube, not really able to be creative and have their viewpoints out there and matter. And what would your advice be to a business who already has it set up, and how do we even disassemble it to a way that would actually work? Because people don't want to give up their titles. They're almost kind of married to them, like it means something, like important to them.
Yeah, it's true. And, it doesn't necessarily mean giving up your titles. I mean, some organizations have abolished titles altogether. Organizations have created new types of titles. And so you're right. I mean, most employees don't feel like they're being led. They feel like they're being like they are being dragged, like literally across the dirt, like it's like a dog that doesn't want to go get a bath, and you just have to drag it into the bathtub. And that's how a lot of people feel inside their organizations. Yeah. And I think instead, what managers and business leaders need to do, well, first we need to promote the right people. We need to promote people that don't do that dragging of the employee. And typically those people that get those positions of power, they're good individual contributors. They're good at the bringing in money. They're good at delegating. They're good at like the typical businessy skills, but they lack in all the soft skills. They lack in communication. They lack in the collaboration. They lack in the engaging and empowering and inspiring others. So we've been promoting the wrong people. That's the first big problem. Okay. Instead, we need to promote the people that are good at the soft skills and then teach them how to build a team, how do you delegate, how do you manage money? That makes more sense. So that's where I would start. And the second thing that I would do is have more of an ongoing dialogue with the people who work for your organization. Managers are very much in this mentality where we have to come up with things and then tell employees what to do. Instead, we need to say, why don't we ask employees what they care about, what they value, what they want to see inside of our organization, and see what we can do to build this kind of a company together. So that is, I think, a much better way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if you watch Star Trek at all, but I really like Next Generation. And the captain, Jean-Luc Picard, one thing I really admire about his leadership, a fictional character, of course, but one thing I really liked is he always looked for counsel from his people beneath him. And sometimes they could not only be like an officer, they could be someone, of a lower status, but he valued their opinion and then would be the one to go on a decision based on their opinion. And to me, I thought that was a really awesome way to lead. Yeah.
It's a great example, right? I mean, I love science fiction. I used to watch a lot of Star Trek, pretty much any science fiction. I love movies, TV shows, books, whatnot. But you're right. It's when you seek counsel from people who don't expect that you would seek counsel from them, they feel more valued. They feel like their voices are being heard. And it feels good, right? I mean, you as an employee feel a sense of pride and accomplishment when your manager comes to you and says, look, I'd love to hear what you think about this. What do you think? How can I do better? How can we do better? And so it's tough, right? As a manager, it's tough to admit that you don't know something or that you need help. But it's an important mental shift that we have to make.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that was very interesting. You said you have companies working the old style, but giving a lot of perks. And I've worked at places like that. And you do feel like, oh, great, nice perks, but I'm still treated like a slave. But then I've been in other businesses where, they couldn't do the perks, but they valued my opinion. And one in particular boss was a great boss because he would say, I see the value in you. I see your best skills. And he would pull them out of me and make me feel so valuable that I couldn't wait to go and get up on Monday to go there. And that was a special place. Now, they didn't pay me a lot because they couldn't, but it was that being valued that was worth more than money or perks.
And, it's different for different people, right? Some people have a job just because they want money. Other people have a job because they, feel that greater sense of calling. Yeah. And, that's okay, right? I mean, it's okay to have a job because you need the money. The point is to understand why you have that job and for the managers to understand why you have that job so that you guys are both in alignment. If you do a kick-ass job at an organization, but you're there just because you want that paycheck, that's fine, right? That's okay. I mean, if a manager acknowledges that and says, look, you do an awesome job here. I know that you're in it for the money. That's totally okay. But you need to have that kind of like that balance between employee expectations and manager expectations, because if the employee is there for money only and you're trying to worry about giving them a sense of purpose and fulfillment and all that sort of stuff, like it just doesn't match up. Okay. And so you need to have that conversation with your people. I think that's very, very important. And perks, it's not that they're bad, right? I
Mm.
mean, the perks are okay. You know, who doesn't love
They
free
rock.
food and whatnot? But it's not the core of how you get employees to actually want to show up to work. Perks can be a part of a strategy, but they're more like they're the tactics, right? They're the little things that you do, not so much the actual strategic component that you need to focus on. So, you know, perks are okay, but don't start with perks. Start with those kind of deeper layers of conversations with your people first.
I love that you mentioned that, because one thing I got from talking to a number of employees in different businesses is they really feel like they don't really matter, that I'm just a number, I'm a cube dweller, they really don't care about me. And I think if they have that conversation to see where you're coming from, what really matters to you, getting that paycheck and having the great life outside, but you're willing to kick butt here, that's awesome. But to know where each person's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of these perks, right? A lot of these engagement efforts, they start to feel like employee manipulation, and employees recognize that, and they start to understand that, like, all right, well, you know, nothing is changing at this organization, but now all of a sudden they're just giving us free stuff, and they just want me to stay here longer. They just want me to work harder. Like, you know, I'm still not treated well, but now I get free food so that I stay here for dinner and I come here early for breakfast. And so employees are very well aware of, things that your organization does that feels like they're trying to manipulate you instead of genuinely actually caring about you. And we need to be very, very careful about that, right? Because nobody wants to feel like they're being manipulated and toyed with, and like, you know, you don't want to feel like you're a lemon and the organization is like the juice press that's just like squeezing every drop out of you. That's not how anybody wants to feel.
Oh, wow. I love that you mentioned that, because recently I went to a meeting. It was a corporate meeting. I started talking to some of the employees because they started adding a lot of perks. And I said, well, how, do you feel jazzed about it? And one of them said, that a manager said, well, just that. Yeah, they just want us to never leave here. That's all. And then the other one looked at me and said, what, the new swag? I was like, whoa.
And many people feel like that, right? Many people feel like that. And so it's important, you know, like I said, perks aren't a bad thing. But if you do them on their own without actually changing any of like the core workplace practices, then you're going to find that it can actually be kind of a double-edged sword, right? It can do a little bit of harm, not just good.
Wow. Now talk to me a little bit about soft skills, because say there's you have a very established business, you think your managers are doing awesome, and they are doing awesome, but maybe their soft skills could use some work. Would you suggest, is it trainable to learn these soft skills, or do you have to get new people?
You know, soft skills are much harder to learn than the so-called hard skills, right? It's much harder to teach somebody to become empathetic. It's much harder to teach somebody to be able to engage and empower and inspire others than it is to say, hey, here's how you manage money. Here's how you delegate. Here are the qualities that you need to look for to build a team. Like, that's much easier to teach than these kind of soft skills. And so what I find is that in the world, there are people who are generally good at those soft skills that when you talk to them, you genuinely feel like they are interested, like they care about you. They're people. And those, I think, make very good managers. Those are the ones that make very good leaders. It's not that you can't teach that. You know, I'm sure you can in some way, but it's much harder. So I would start with the people who are really good at those people types of skills, and instead of just promoting the people that are good at bringing in money and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, here's the other part of it. You have to be teachable and want to learn. A good portion of people have got it stuck in their ways, like, this is it, this is how you do things, and there's no other way to do it. And if you're at that kind of mindset, well, there's no teaching you then at that point.
No, and when you try to force people to learn these new things, and if they're not genuinely kind of there with you, they're going to be like, whatever, right? It's like going to school, right? When you go to school, there's some courses you have to take that you really don't care about and you don't pay attention, and there are other courses that you genuinely have an interest in. So sometimes teaching these soft skills to managers and leaders, for them it feels like taking that course in school that they genuinely just don't care about, and so as a result, they're not going to give as much effort to it as they should to be successful.
Wow. And let's speak to the businesses out there who are very small, who maybe have one employee, maybe a virtual assistant, or working with a lot of vendors. Because I've heard more and more small businesses say, I have about 5 or 6 different vendors. Does some of this play into working with your vendors as well?
Sure. I mean, I have, so whether it's a small business or vendors, it doesn't matter that much, right? So I'm technically can be considered a small business as well. So I have a team of, probably 5 or 6 people that I work with. And whether you're a small company or a large company, right, every employee experience comes down to three things: culture, technology, and physical space. So how employees feel working with you, the tools they use to get their jobs done, and the environment in which they actually work. And so whether it is a small business or it's a large company, you know, those three attributes, those three environments still apply. And with working with vendors, it's still the same thing, right? I mean, you want to have that kind of that human connection, that trust, that relationship. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. Going back to the analogy in your personal life, right? It doesn't matter if it's your spouse or it's a friend or it's an acquaintance. You still want to treat them in a way that you would want to be treated. And so the same is true in the business world, regardless of who you're talking to.
Wow. So why does the environment play such a role in that? Where is the location? Say you have a building. Why does it matter what the actual feel of the environment is?
Oh, it's huge. So culture is 40%, technology is 30%, and the physical space is 30% as far as how those contribute to the overall employee experience. And again, whether you're a small company or a big company, the physical space acts as kind of a symbol that represents your organization. So think about Batman, right? Batman had the bat symbol. You would see that everywhere. That was his symbol. That's what represented him and who he was and what he stood for. And so your physical space is the same for your organization. So if you force employees to sit in cubicles, if you force them to, you know, wear a suit and tie to work every day, if you force them to work in these outdated environments, that is what your organization, that's what the physical space symbolizes. An outdated organization, conservative, right? That's the symbol that it gives off. And so you need to think about that, which, by the way, that might be an okay symbol for you if that's kind of the vibe that you're going for. But you need to think about your physical space as a symbol that represents your brand and your company and what you want that symbol to be. I mean, imagine it's something that you have to put on every day. It's something that your employees have to put on every day. And they, you know, you have like this symbol embroidered on their arm, on their chest, on their back, wherever. What do you want that symbol to be? And I think that will help you decide what kind of a physical space you should be creating.
Wow. And how did technology play a part in that? Because I know when I first got started, I didn't do anything with texting. And I got a lot of negative feedback saying, join the real world, the future, you need to text. And so I, you know, begrudgingly got on the wagon and now have a texting way for people to get a hold of us. But how important is technology and in implementing it into business?
So technology is 30% of an overall employee experience, and it's important because it refers to the tools and the devices that employees use to get their job done. If you want your employees to do something, but they don't have the right tools to do it, it becomes very frustrating. And we always assume that technology is something that exists in its own little bucket outside of being anything human. But anybody's been in this situation where when the tools break down, so do the human aspects around those tools. So if employees don't have tools to get their jobs done, you know, collaboration breaks down, communication breaks down, trust breaks down, employees start to become disengaged and resentful. And now all of a sudden the technology problem becomes a human problem. And so it's very, very important for us to think about it in those terms. Technology doesn't just sit in its own little bucket. When you don't integrate it into, you know, in the right way, technology becomes a human problem, and that's what you don't want.
Wow. And that's fascinating to me because recently I just dealt with a business this week who one of the employees said the system keeps crashing and then I have to take the work home and that makes me very unhappy. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Now that technology problem is a human problem because the employees are already getting frustrated. They're having to work from home instead of being able to relax with their family. So you can start to see how technology weighs in a little bit on the human component.
Yeah. And you mentioned culture, and culture would entail also the way people are being in an office, right? Because I remember being in an office a number of years ago, there was very family feel to it. I would come in and everyone would feel like you're at home, and we would have coffee twice a day and we'd sit around the coffee guy who would come around with a little ding ding coffee thing and we'd like sit and talk, and it was just a lot of fun. That's part of the culture I think you're talking about, bringing that to wherever you are, whatever culture you want to create.
Yeah, I mean, culture comprises 40% of the employee experience, so more than the other two. And I like to think of culture as the side effects of working for your company. So, you know, if you look on TV when you're watching a TV show and a prescription drug comes on, you'll see that the side effects are usually pretty darn bad, right? Nobody ever has good side effects. It's like bleeding from the eyes and skin discoloration and nausea. And
may cause death.
In some cases, death, like all these terrible things that happen to you. And our organizations oftentimes have the same side effects, where from working there over time, you feel like you are gaining weight, you feel stressed out, you feel nauseous, you're unhappy, sometimes you're bleeding from the eyes, and in some cases you might actually die from working there. And so the side effects are, working for an organization, the side effects can also be good. So you can work for an organization where the side effects are a sense of curiosity, a sense of wonder, a sense of growth and purpose and fulfillment. So for me, when I think of corporate culture, it's what are the side effects of working for that organization? If you were to take what it's like to work there and put it in a pill and you swallowed that pill, would you be willing to swallow that pill is the question that I would ask.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking to, Jacob, is so important for businesses to get, because the one business I talked about that couldn't wait to go to work on Monday, they had changed their corporate structure after the first 4 years there. They had decided, hey, we want to go and hire a CFO and make it more corporate-y and made people come in ties and suits. When before we had birthday cakes every week, we had the coffee trolley come by twice a day, and we went out for cocktails on Friday. Everything changed when they went super corporate, and so did the productivity. So sometimes you think, hey, going super corporate, helped the bottom line, but actually it didn't.
Yeah, that's, it's oftentimes a misnomer, right? What helps the bottom line is investing in your people, not investing in the numbers.
Yeah.
So if you invest in the people will impact the numbers. If you just invest in the numbers, your people aren't going to do anything more to contribute to help make those numbers increase. So always pick people over anything else.
I agree. Well, this has been a fascinating talk, and I'm so grateful you came to share. But before we leave, you have to let everyone know where they can get your awesome book and find out more about you.
Sure. So the book is called The Employee Experience Advantage. It's available pretty much anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you want to try to find it. Also in airports around the United States if you find yourself traveling. A simple way is go to the Future organization or just type in Jacob Morgan in Google. That'll take you to my site, and you'll see links to the podcast, 30 pages of the book if people want it. And probably the easiest way, newsletter as well. If you text the word future to the number 44222, that'll add you to the newsletter, and you can get some cool content there as well.
Fabulous. And what is your podcast called?
It's called the Future of Work Podcast.
Wow, awesome. And when can they listen to it? Tell them.
So the episodes go out every Sunday night, and it's once a week with a senior executive where we talk about how the workplace is changing and what the future of work is going to look like. So it's pretty interesting. I'm always surprised the things that executives are willing to share on a podcast that they wouldn't share elsewhere.
Wow, well, that's fascinating. So thank you. So where can they listen to it? Let them know where they can listen to it as well.
Yes. Yeah. So you can find all those episodes on my website as well. There's a podcast tab there. And it's also available, just like your show, on iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher. I don't know if it's on iHeartRadio. What was that one?
Is it on Blog Talk Radio as well?
I don't think so. No, I need to work on getting it up there. I gotta take some lessons from your show and get it on iHeartRadio, on Blog Talk Radio, on and all these other places. So I'll look at what you're doing, and I'm going to copy it. All
righty, sounds great. Well, I want to thank you again, Jacob, for sharing and coming to Savvy Business Radio to share your valuable wisdom today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
It was. Thank you.